This is Dr. Robert Frankel. I'm an emergency medicine and anti-aging physician, and welcome to the Modern Man Podcast. In this podcast, we talk about important topics for men, which include male aesthetics, health, and wellness. But most importantly, we try to remove the stigma of male aesthetics because I think that it's important to understand what men can do for aesthetics and how important it is for their social and psychological well-being, and ultimately just to feel and look good. So take the journey with me. It's going to be okay. It's going to be fun, so enjoy it. I think the next episode will be really interesting and informative, so take a listen. Hope you enjoy it. Again, this is Dr. Rob Frankel, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to today's podcast. It's a pretty exciting topic that we're going to be delving into because of the fact that we were thinking about doing something different, but the hot topic of the exciting diet that's running through Hollywood and all over the country, we wanted to get some clarity on what are the facts, the fiction, the excitement, the fear, what's real, what's fake, what's real and fantasy, myth. So we're going to go through the real science behind the exciting and super diet that is running through the country. You've heard it: Semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy. They're all different names, but they're all the same thing. And that's the trick to it, that it's a medication that has lots of different names, has lots of different kind of connotations, but it's all one medication. And of course, because it's the same medication, it works the same way. But of course, pharmaceutically, people think that it's something different, but actually the medication is the same thing. The medication pharmaceutical name is Semaglutide. So we'll get that out straight. So the name that the medication is Semaglutide, and the trade name there's two. There's Ozempic, and the second trade name is Wegovy. So those are the two trade names of the original scientific name, which is Semaglutide. And that's really the whole story behind kind of the confusion and what this medication is, and is it the same? Is it different? They're all the same. It's all one medication. But I'm going to go through kind of the history of how this medication kind of was created into three different names, and why people kind of all have different thoughts about it, and why it seems like it's gotten a lot of buzz in Hollywood, got a lot of buzz all over the country. And we're going to go through what's real, what's, what it is that this medication does, what we have found, what I have seen in our practice, and it's exciting. I know we've kind of gone into this topic now. This is the second kind of podcast, but I thought that a lot of people have been asking about this topic specifically, and I thought that taking a deep dive into this specific medication was a good idea, since there's so much confusion about it, there's so much interest in it, and there's a lot of news reports, there's a lot of things about it that people just don't understand. So I thought that let's talk about it a little bit more. I think that it would be a good kind of idea that we kind of just get a little bit more interest and perspective on the medication. And we're going to go into the, Hollywood, is it fad, fiction, myth, or is it really a good drug? And I'm going to give my perspective on it. I'm going to tell you what I think, and I think that there's definitely, for some people, this is definitely a positive. For some people, it might not be the best thing, and we'll give you kind of the pluses and minuses. And with everything, we always say that you need to kind of talk to your doctor, that your specific conditions are paramount. Your specific situation is different from everybody else. So this is just like everything else. Like you, you should not be going to, parties. We talked about the last podcast that they were having, like Hollywood parties at people's houses where they were giving these shots out without healthcare professionals. This is definitely not a good idea because of the fact that it's potentially dangerous. It's not something that you want to do. If you are, have certain contraindications to taking this medication. So we're going to talk about that, and let's get into it. So the first thing is that let's kind of talk about what it is that we have. So in 2017, semaglutide was branded as Ozempic. So Ozempic was used for as a diabetic medication because of what it does is it does stabilize sugar in the body, meaning that it has two processes. It does increase the production of insulin, but it also decreases the glucagon production of sugar. What does that mean? So what that means is that glucagon is a hormone that actually increases producing sugar that goes into the bloodstream. Insulin actually takes sugar from the blood and moves it into the rest of the body. So when you lack insulin, you have a lot of sugar in your bloodstream and it can't get anywhere else. And that's the reason why people have very high sugars and when they lack insulin, and it can't move anywhere because the sugar can't be transported out of the bloodstream. Glucagon actually takes sugar and it moves it from the storage cells, a lot of times in the liver, and it will move that sugar from the outside of the bloodstream and move it into the bloodstream. So one of the things that the semaglutide will do is it actually stops the sugar from entering the bloodstream from glucagon being suppressed. And the second thing that it does is it's also going to increase the production of insulin or increase insulin's activity, thus increasing the sugar being released, from the bloodstream. What this ultimately does, and we talked about this, last week when we talked a little bit about the HCG diet. When this happens, what ends up happening is that, fat ends up becoming more a part of the metabolism and the breakdown and the use, because your body does need energy. So the energy that it uses is going to not be from, the sugar that's no longer, in the bloodstream. It's going to be used from the fat that's, on your muscle. And so this kind of process of removing the sugar from your bloodstream actually increases lean muscle. And that, in turn, is going to increase metabolism, because the more lean muscle you have, meaning like the more muscle you have that has less fat on it, the more, the more that muscle is going to, percentage of that muscle is going to be just strictly muscle and not fat, and thus the metabolism is going to raise because of that. So that's a really kind of valuable kind of tool. It's it's really effective in that, and so you know, so this is a very good thing. And so Ozempic, the other positive thing is that it has a long half-life. It has a 7-day half-life. So the injections for the Ozempic were once a week. And so the patients didn't have to do shots every day. They didn't have to take pills every day. They literally were going to, just take this shot once a week. And they were getting, help from this, and it was effective. It was great, and they were really happy about this. Um, so that was the first kind of trial that the trade that semaglutide was. They realized also that one of the side effects of um, Ozempic or semaglutide was that people were losing weight. And there were a couple of different reasons why this happened, which we're going to talk about. So what they did is in 2021, there was a trial done on, specifically weight loss. And so what they created was a specific trial on weight loss with this drug, semaglutide, and they took patients that took the drug versus patients that did not take the drug at a certain BMI, and they found that the patients that took the drug for weight loss lost between 10 to 15% of their body weight. And that was good enough for the FDA to say, well, this drug is effective for weight loss. And that's how semaglutide got FDA approval for weight loss. So that in itself created its next branding. And its next branding was Wegovy, which is the same drug as Ozempic, semaglutide, but it's a different purpose. Its purpose was different. And of course, because of the fact that the studies were at different doses, a specific dose that they kind of used, the Wegovy was, branded as a specific dose that, the patients would, they said, had lost weight at. Although, with all of this, which we'll talk about, everybody has to start, whether we're talking about semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy, have to start at the lowest dose because of the fact that you cannot tolerate a naive patient, meaning like a patient who's never taken this, cannot tolerate a dose that is, any higher than the lowest dose initially. You have to build up your tolerance to take this medication. And so it takes months to even get to that dose. And that's kind of what they did for the study. They had these patients literally get to that dose before they even kind of like made the study, made the study what it was. So the patients kind of got to the study, they made it to that point, and then they're like, okay, now we're going to take the study, to the next level. And so Wegovy is just the brand that was purposed for weight loss. But again, like I said, it's the same drug. It's all the same. It's all kind of run the same way. It's the same doses. And because of the fact that they kind of purposed it for that, they changed the name. So that way, I guess they didn't want confusion. But of course, it created tons of confusion because people, don't understand, like, well, what do you mean? Is it the same drug? Is it a different drug? I don't understand. So what is semaglutide? Semaglutide is a glycogen like peptide. This means that, it helps the move, it helps the, the glycogen kind of move, it's helping the glycogen, kind of move. It lives in the small intestine normally. So this GLPs, we call them GLPs, um, and normally you find these peptides in the small intestine. So these are mimics these type of peptides that are found. Now, what do they do? So we already talked about two of the main things that they do. One is they inhibit glucagon, stopping the sugar coming in, and they increase the production of insulin, which of course helps get rid of sugar. And both of those things do help increase lean muscle. The second thing that it does is it's going to help really, which is the major kind of part of it, is it kind of helps kind of with what we call satiety, and that is your ability to feel full. So there is a hormone called incretin, and incretin is a hormone that your body creates that is present when you are, like you ate enough, you're like you just had Thanksgiving dinner, you're, like you unbutton your pants, you're ready to watch the football games, you're done, you're filled, So we hope that, this is a time where incretin, comes into play. Now, the scary little secret is that as patients or people gain weight, not everybody's a patient, not every person is, not every people are patients, but as people gain weight and actually as they kind of create have inflammatory conditions like diabetes, hypertension, other type of inflammatory, even heart disease, their production of these satiety hormones like incretin actually are suppressed. So this doesn't make kind of sense. You would think that it would be the opposite. Like, okay, like I'm gaining weight. I would hope that, like there would be a kind of warning label saying that, okay, you really need to kind of slow down and stop. But the reality is that this is the exact opposite. This is your body actually stops the production or slows down, your body's ability to do this. And this is a really kind of difficult thing because of the fact that um, you know this really kind of harms your ability to slow down when you're eating. So the reality is that when people like are gaining weight, they actually their appetite doesn't suppress, it actually increases. Why this happens, I guess there are theories out there that say that your body kind of needs to, I guess, sustain itself more. It's thinking that it needs more kind of energy to kind of, work because of the fact that it has more. But you would have hoped that it would have turned off those triggers, but it actually does the opposite. So that's one of the major things. Now, with these GLPs, semaglutide being one of them, they increase the production of the incretin and these other satiety hormones. And so what that does ultimately is that's going to allow your body to feel full quicker. And so that means that, hey, I just had, whatever meal you had, part of the meal, all of a sudden, instead of like feeling like, like you want to finish that, like full meal, you feel like I've had enough. I mean, this is great for those listening in the U.S., if you go to Europe, you know that the portions are much different in the U.S. versus in Europe. And if you go on a European trip, this would be great because of the fact that the portions are much different. But the point is that the amount of intake you need goes down dramatically, and it's because of these hormones being released, and that's one of the major kind of causes of that, the incretin actually allowing that to happen. The second reason is that your body actually will decrease its gastric emptying. So gastric emptying is kind of like, as you're eating, for instance, what's happening? Like you're eating, you fill up your stomach, and then that's going to push the food into your small intestine. So the time that it takes for the food to get into your stomach and into your small intestine is what we call gastric emptying. And so if that time is delayed for whatever reason, obviously you're going to feel fuller. You're going to feel maybe even bloated. You're going to feel like you don't want to eat. You're going to feel like, I don't feel like I need to eat anymore. So the semaglutide does decrease gastric emptying, and so that's another reason why your body also has a decrease in wanting to eat, desire to eat, and just feeling full more often. And the third reason is there is another kind of mechanism in the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is in your brain, and there are also enzymes within there that we've kind of noticed that will cause your body to also say, desire to eat is one of the things, kind of like your pleasure to eat. Those hormones actually are also suppressed, as well as some more of those enzymes that make you feel full. So those are also another reason why your body kind of cools down on just your desire to eat. So there's a bunch of different, those are the major kind of reasons why you have that. And so you think about it, the people who are most kind of prone to having these issues are people who have a higher BMI. And the reason that is because of the fact that they're the ones that already have suppression of their hormones that are, of satiety, right? So that's one of the reasons why that, to be a good candidate for, taking this medication, you need a BMI of, at least 27 with some type of inflammatory conditions, or over 30, because of the fact that, its major mechanism of action is something that for some people who are thinner, or, or have kind of intact, ability to kind of recognize that they're full, might not have the same kind of reaction, or kind of same kind of ability to have that effect with the medication, so they won't get the same positive effect. So that's the reason why it's valuable. So that's really one of the major kind of criteria of the hormone. So So the BMI is definitely the first criteria of the hormone. So, I think that there's definitely a really strong place for this medication for a lot of people. But we're going to talk about a little bit about the downsides because I think that they're important, and I think people need to know, like, what are the downsides? And I'm not going to sit here and um, run through one of those pharmaceutical commercials where I'm going to play violins and happy clappy music and tell you that you're going to um, don't worry, you could lose your limbs, die, and all that jazz while somebody's dancing and singing in the background. But I will going to give you the basic facts on what are the risks of taking this medication because I think it's important to know. Of course, every medication has risks, and every medication you have to take. In medicine itself, I think that it's very important that people need to know that the way that we should all be doing medicine. I believe this firmly in practice that all medicine needs to be like a risk benefit um, profile, meaning that there's risk in everything that we do. Taking a Tylenol has actually significant risk, but the benefit risk has to be the benefit has to outweigh the risk, and there has to be a significant kind of outweigh in a lot of cases. So um, or at least a good amount, a good amount of benefit compared to the risk. So, so let's talk about what are the risks. So, in some of the studies, they found that the test animals had, and I believe they were either mice or rats, developed thyroid cancer, and there was a linkage to multiple endocrine neoplasm. People who have that trait in their families have a higher risk of developing that, and so that's definitely something that if you have that in your family, it's a contraindication for sure. Um, People who have a history of pancreatitis, the pancreas um, you know, is part of the mechanism of how this drug kind of affects because of the fact that it's affecting insulin and everything. So yeah, so the pancreatitis can be can happen. Um, Anybody with liver kidney disease definitely contraindicated. For this medication, as well as gallbladder and anybody who's on a diabetic medicine that's lowering their blood sugar to begin with. I mean, that's another kind of contraindication as well. Um, so, I mean, these are kind of some of the kind of like outlies, like big kind of, like red flashing lights, um, for, this medication. What are some of the more of the common things? I mean, most of them are gastrointestinal, um, you know, nausea, vomiting, heartburn. We've seen patients with heartburn, nausea, up to, something called gastroparesis, which is basically kind of almost like a seizing up of the stomach, which you're getting cramping and just like feeling unwell. This is more of kind of the um, gastroparesis is more of a severe kind of uncommon um, situation, but I mean, it can happen. But these are the things that are kind of linked to taking this medication, and that's why you have to be closely monitored by a health professional. So, like I said, like there's a risk benefit ratio that has to be looked at with all of this, and so what's the bottom line? The bottom line really is that um, you know people who have significant weight to lose or have weight loss issues that have had issues have a significant risk of heart disease, diabetes, strokes, even cancer. And so with that, you have to put into that fact that without losing the weight, they're going to have potential health effects without any intervention. So the risk of taking a medication like this without that, everything else has failed or everything else has not been beneficial to kind of get the effects are definitely you have to kind of put the two pieces together, and that's what I always tell patients. But again, I'm going to reiterate this point. This is not a medication for everyone. I'm not advocating this for every single person. You need to go to your doctor, and you need to make sure that your doctor says that this is right for you. We're definitely not advocating and saying that this is medically this is right for every person, and it's right for some people, and it may not be right for every person. Like I said, there are certain kind of risks for every person, and that's kind of the thing. So so what is the protocol? Like, how do you do it? I mean, basically, like how we run our programs is that we'll take each patient, we'll evaluate them, monitor them closely. We'll see them every week. We'll do the injections starting at the lowest dose at 0.25 milligrams, and then every 2 weeks we're going to evaluate to see if we can increase the dose or the dose is right for them. And it's a very kind of deliberate process because of the fact that if you go too high too quickly, patients can not do well or not tolerate the medication. It's not smart to take this medication at a very high dose very quickly because you're going to do poorly. And that is factual. That is what all the data shows, and all the pharmaceuticals will tell you the same story. So it's really important that you kind of realize that even though Wegovy says that its studies were done at 2.5 milligrams, Wegovy doesn't start at 2.5 milligrams. It starts at 0.25 milligrams, and because of the fact that that's all you can tolerate, because it's the same drug as semaglutide and the same drug as Ozempic. So that's the point. It's just all the same drug. And the point is that you have to start slow and build yourself up to it and tolerate it at the right dose. So it's an interesting kind of effect. I do think that that there is some benefit as far as kind of the metabolic effect, the positive metabolic effect of taking this medication. I think that you do gain lean muscle mass, and I do think that you can increase your metabolism with this. So the reports that you're going to gain all the weight back, I don't know that that's true. I think that with any program, if you just start pounding food again, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to gain weight back. But I do think that there is some positive metabolic effect that occurs when you take this medication. Now, definitively, can I say that? I don't think anybody could say that much about this because it's only been approved since 2021. So I think the jury is still out, and I think that the research is still ongoing. But I do think that it has shown to be an effective tool for a lot of patients initially, and for the most part, most people have tolerated it pretty well as far as the side effects go. But again, not everybody this is right for, and so that's the ultimate point. So that being said, this is kind of the whole kind of story behind this medication. It is, it's like I said, I've said this in the last podcast, it's an interesting medication. It is obviously not a magic bullet. You're not going to take a shot and lose 30 pounds in a day. This is definitely doing, the right things is always the smart thing. Exercise, eating right, absolutely the best, the best thing you can do for yourself, for your body. Um, but it does have some, benefit if you are kind of having trouble getting over the hump. So, like I said, I am cautiously optimistic about semaglutide, and I feel that we have enough evidence to say that it's got some promise, and like I said, we have started using it in our practice, and we've had pretty good success with it. So we're going to keep track of it. If things change, of course, we will tell you at the Modern Man Podcast. So we appreciate your listenership. We hope that this information was useful to you. If it was, please like, share, and subscribe to our content. Once again, we will see you next week right here at the Modern Man Podcast.